Coming up, how does the Quinault Nation grapple with the threats of climate change? ICT sheds light on relocation and resiliency. Plus, a tribe in Oregon hasn't seen salmon for over a century. A major dam removal project could change that. And the nation's 23rd Poet Laureate talks about the issues facing Native people in the world today. Join us for those interviews plus headlines on the ICT Newscast.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.
Support for the ICT Newscast with Aaliyah Chavez comes from the Arizona PBS studios in Phoenix at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communications at Arizona State University. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Trahant. Alaska Senator Lisa Murkowski has introduced legislation that will improve federal programs and services for Native American and Native Hawaiian elders. The Native Elder Act prioritizes support services and in-home modifications that will allow Native American elders to age in place and in their communities. Nationwide, Native elders already face substantially worse health outcomes at disproportionately higher rates than other seniors. According to Murkowski in a press release, bridging that divide is done by ensuring our elders have the support they need to age at their home in their local communities. In Oklahoma, a new medical school has become the country's first tribally affiliated institution. Oklahoma State University's College of Osteopathic Medicine, located on the Cherokee Nation, trains modern Indigenous healers to treat patients in a holistic manner, combining traditional healing practices with modern medicine. The institution was created in partnership with the Cherokee Nation and the university in an effort to serve Native communities with traditional medicine and staff underserved rural medical facilities. The school will celebrate its first class of graduates this May. 1 in 8 Native American children face food insecurity, uncertain access to healthy and affordable food to meet their nourishment needs. On the Fort Belknap Reservation in Montana, healthy food became hard to access during COVID-19. Nonprofit organizer Tesha Hawley started the Day Eagle Hope Project to feed her people. She created a food pantry out of a shipping container and now works with schools to send students home with meals for the weekend.
Like, no family should be going hungry. No child should be going hungry ever, anywhere. And it's irregardless of race, socioeconomics, anything. And what I hope to get out of this is that we start changing our diets so we can live longer and more healthy and have access to quality food.
The school food pantry officially opened in April, fully stocked with healthy meals and personal hygiene items for students to take home. A chilling murder mystery series stars face a familiar face. Under the Bridge is about a group of teens who fantasize about crime until one night it becomes all too real as a 14-year-old girl goes missing after a party and is found dead. Lily Gladstone plays a cop who follows twists and turns in trying to bring justice to the young girl as she battles with conflicts of her own. Her character's Indigenous background highlights a period in Canada where federal policies were passed to facilitate adoptions that took Indigenous children away from their families. Under the Bridge is based off the book by Rebecca Godfrey and is now available to stream on Hulu. And speaking of the Academy Award nominee and Golden Globe winner, Lily Gladstone, she returned to her alma mater this weekend, inspiring the University of Montana's class of 2024 as she received an honorary doctorate. Gladstone, who graduated from the university in 2008, shared her unique journey from Montana to Hollywood. She spoke to a packed field house about the importance of following one's heart and staying true to one's roots, even in the face of uncertainty and opportunity.
Lead with your heart. Lead with joy. Lead with compassion. You may be very skilled in whatever field it is that you've just picked up. You can tuck that in your belt, but that's that's a supporting framework that should always prop up your kindness.
Gladstone emphasized that there is no magic formula to success, but encouraged all to follow their hearts.
How does a tribal nation, such as the Quinault in Washington state, grapple with the threats that come with climate change? And perhaps even more pressing, how do they pay for it? Our Mark Trahant is back to shed light on part 2 of your reporting from the Quinault Nation in Washington state. Welcome back.
Thank you, Aaliyah. You know, as rising seas loom over villages in Quinault, the nation in many ways is ahead of other communities in planning and preparing for the inevitable. The risk of flooding is growing, and that begs a looming question. How will we pay for all of this? We are just beginning to see how expensive adapting to a new climate will be. The Bureau of Indian Affairs has awarded $25 million for 3 communities working on their move to higher ground. In addition to Quinault, 2 villages in Alaska, Newtok and the native village of Nupakiak, top the list. The BIA will spend another $12.7 million next year on managed relocation for tribes in Maine, Louisiana, as well as others in Alaska and Washington. All told, the budget for next year totals $119 million for tribes and community-based projects. And back to Quinault. A second village, Queets, is also in the early stages of a relocation plan. The takeaway here is the scale of what's required across the globe to move people away from danger.
I had the chance to visit Quinault a year ago, and they are doing just amazing work on climate relocation and climate resilience. We provided funding to Quinault almost 2 years ago now, or a year and a half ago. It's one of 3 communities that are going to serve as kind of pilot projects on community-driven relocation. I was really impressed by the foresight in their planning. You know, we shouldn't be surprised that when tribes have resources, they're able to do very impressive things. Not only are they taking the lead here in the United States, they are really serving as leaders in this effort for the world. There aren't a lot of places that are really engaged in this sort of activity right now.
So every one of these houses is full of brackish water underneath them, causing a bunch of mold problems. Walls are being replaced.
But what the tribe is doing at Quinault, what they're doing at Nupakiak and Newtok in Alaska, is they're really on the leading edge of things that we're going to have to think harder about across the globe.
The biggest question may be the scale of what's involved. So many places across the planet where people have lived for generations may no longer be habitable.
On top of that, Mark, there are tribes that are facing impacts from climate change that aren't necessarily going to require them to move entire communities, but they're going to have to spend a lot of money making their communities more resilient, whether it's drought or wildfire, or changing ecosystems that change the foods that they eat, or just more severe weather. It's not just relocation, which is expensive enough, but it's also that resilience piece of it. And we're really ramping up our investments there as well. As you know, we just rolled out a $120 million investment at more than 100 locations across the country to help tribes with that resilience piece. Tribes have really been at the leading edge of people in this country feeling the impacts of climate change. And of course, tribes have been warning about this for a long time.
A report by the Natural Resources Defense Council, the NRDC, looked at the risk of flooding and concluded that more communities are in danger. The data was collected from the Federal Emergency Management Agency.
The scale of what we all need to be planning for and thinking about is massive. It is a bigger and more communal problem than many of us have ever thought about before in our lifetimes or for generations. And so even in communities that have put so much thought and effort and planning into relocation, you can still see how hard it is. Most of the data that we have are from non-tribal communities because those are the places that are more likely to have federally backed flood insurance through FEMA, which is where a lot of our data comes from. And looking at those data sets from FEMA, we see that before getting any kind of help to reduce the risk to your repeatedly flooded home, you might flood 3, 4, 5, 10 times before any assistance is available.
And part of the problem is that even after a flood, communities will rebuild using zoning rules that have been around for decades, even though the world is changing.
The actual risk is changing because of climate change, development patterns, erosion. A place that didn't flood a generation ago might be flooding regularly now. It might be flooding every time there's a high tide. Another reason why areas that have previously been considered low risk are now at higher risk is because our understanding of that risk is just out of date. In a lot of places around the country, FEMA's flood risk maps, which form the basis for our floodplain management decisions, are 5, 10, 15, 20 plus years out of date.
How do communities figure this out? Do we move now, a few years from now, or after a flood?
It just depends on the particular needs and priorities of an individual community. So that's one component, is flexibility. You can't use a cookie cutter program that is going to do the same thing for the lots and lots of different communities who are facing different kinds of risks, who have different cultures, different histories, and are dealing with different landscapes and even types of housing. So programs have to be flexible enough to be able to meet the community's specific needs. Another thing is who's involved in the planning, who's at the table, who gets to make the decisions about when we move, where we move, what the community we move to will look like. These are all questions that communities dealing with the fact of relocation are grappling with.
I was really impressed that they are thinking at Quinault very strategically about how to address these questions. And a lot of the people that I spoke with in the community are being very thoughtful about that, along with community members in places like Newtok and Napakiak. You know, they're not only thinking about themselves and the equities or the equity they've built in their own homes, they're thinking about their kids and their grandkids in the community that they're going to live in future generations. And, you know, this is just another example of when we make investments in tribes and we partner with them and make sure that we're supporting them as leaders on these types of issues, that tribal people come up with really innovative solutions. And so, again, it's exciting to watch what they're doing.
Mark, the number seems staggering. The $450 million is just for one tribal community. What does this look like beyond Quinault?
Oh, you're right, Aaliyah. Let me share some numbers with you. Nearly 10% of all houses are at risk from flooding, and the total cost is estimated globally to be $25 trillion. And it's not just the coast, it's not just Quinault, it's really across the board. You look at one study that just came out from Oklahoma, and it said nearly 70% of Native Americans could be impacted by heavy flooding or heavy rains.
That is really staggering there, Mark. Thank you so much.
The Klamath tribes in southern Oregon haven't seen salmon for over a century. That could change with a major dam removal project along the Klamath River. Nika Bartow-Smith met with tribal members along the river and got a first-hand look at the hope and that's springing up.
All along this reporting journey, I got to meet people from Native nations living all along the Klamath River and hear about what dam drawdown and river restoration means for the people that live along the river. I think about Clayton Dumont from the Klamath tribes up in southern Oregon. He talked about just this idea that, you know, while he wasn't able to fish on his ancestral lands growing up, there's now a chance that his grandkids will be able to do that and generations after, and how that is beyond exciting, right? Because the Klamath tribes haven't had salmon on their ancestral lands for over a century. And so this potential return of salmon is a really big deal for everybody in the tribe. And I met Richard Green, a Yurok citizen who's working on the revegetation. And he talked about how his grandmother actually went and did a lot of protests when she was a young kid, right? Before she could talk, but she was holding signs calling for the dams to come down. And then she passed away before dam removal had actually started to take place. He is able to carry on her legacy in helping restore this river as the water is already coming down. Another really significant piece of this dam drawdown is the fact that land is reemerging that for so long had been covered by the water, and there's chances for potential land back scenarios for Native nations along the river. There's one tribe in particular, the Shasta Indian Nation, has talked about how this might be a land back opportunity for them. And I think that would be particularly monumental because Shasta Indian Nation is not a federally recognized tribe. And so having land back would be a really big deal and might be one of the first times we've seen this happen. The next steps are revegetation. As the water has been drawn down, the area itself is cracked and doesn't look like much, but there's crews on the ground led by folks from Native nations along the river that are working to revegetate this area, right? So planting tens of thousands of different species and working to bring fish back and create tributaries for the fish to return to. And that's ongoing work that's going to continue for likely well over the next decade. My dream would be to go back in the next couple of years as changes are starting to happen, right? When I got to go see the dam removal, it was pre any of the drawdowns happening. So I got to see the river kind of in its old form, and I'm really excited to go back as it takes on a new form that's more natural to what it should have been and was before.
A pilot program to address the challenges of addiction and homelessness launched on Montana's Flathead Reservation. People committed to recovering will be offered housing and support services to keep them sober and off the streets. Liz Dempsey reports how the program is already making a difference.
The Recovery Village opened with the celebration of its goal to help individuals and families struggling with addiction and homelessness. 28 housing units are designed for those who are committed to recovery and need a sober home to live in. Next door is the Recovery Village Hub, which provides a number of support services for addicts. Director of Hub Recovery Home, Tony Myers, says the center helps people help themselves.
We provide group meetings, recovery meetings. Recovery is different for everybody, so we have lots of different services that we do provide, lots of different recovery avenues that individuals can find their own path, find out what works for them.
Drug and alcohol counselors say their clients were having a hard time staying clean and sober because they were living with people who were still using. A lot of people come into recovery leaving an old lifestyle behind them, and that is the only life that they have ever known. The Salish Kootenai Housing Authority partnered with Never Alone Recovery Support Services, or NARS, and CSKT Healing Courts to develop the Recovery Village. Executive Director of NARS, Dawn Roberts, said addicts need a sense of safety and security when in recovery.
We're going to make sure you're not hungry, you got a roof over your head, we're going to help you find work, we're going to get these real basic pieces of the hierarchy taken care of. And from there, the social learning component comes in, the peer support.
Alcohol and drugs can play a big role in pulling people away from their culture. Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribal member James Big Beaver says being in recovery has encouraged him to get back to his roots.
On the reservation here, I did grow up traditionally, so pretty much I wanted to get back to my dances, our medicine dances, our lodges, and just get back in there, and hopefully everybody will get back into what we knew.
Recovery Village residents are already looking out for each other. Bo Miller witnessed drug activity in the community and did something about it.
We had a Jeep from Idaho come in, and I seen a bunch of traffic in and out of one of the houses that ain't one of the residents yet. We turned it in and we got 300 fentanyl pills off the street, a bunch of meth, so that was awesome.
The founders of this recovery village would like to see this idea taken up across this reservation and others.
Long-term goal is really get our program development really situated away, and then per invite, go out to other reservations and other communities and show them how we did this and just offer that technical assistance.
The program also hopes to expand outside of tribal membership and offer services to all who struggle with addiction and want recovery. Reporting for the ICT Newscast from the homelands of the Silis, Calypso, and Kasanka people, I am Liz Dempsey with the University of Montana School of Journalism.
Chi Escalingwat. Chi Escalingwat. I'm happy-minded. I'm happy-minded. Chi Escalingwat. Chi Escalingwat. I'm happy-minded. I'm happy-minded.
Joy Harjo has won the hearts and minds of folks from all over the globe with her words and music. From poetry, children's books, and music, she's a true artist and philosopher whose works reflects her Muskogee heritage. Joy Harjo was our 23rd Poet Laureate. She's also a saxophone player, as well as a mother and grandmother. I asked her what issues face Native people in the world today.
The one that's intimate and up close in our community and family is really the young people. And of course language is part of that, but also how we transmit stories or how we transmit culture when everyone is on their cell phones and everyone is on their computers. It's strange. It's like my son works for the railroad in New Mexico, and he was mentoring a young worker who came to work for the railroad, and the young man couldn't believe, he says, you used to have to look up phone numbers in phone books or memorize them, and he couldn't believe that, that we had to do that, or his generation, and he's younger than, as my son. And then he says, we don't go to anyone's houses. We just talk, we just text. And we can play games at a distance. It's shocking, really, and yet it's a different kind of reality. So somehow we have to find a way, a go-between, a way so that that our children don't lose the connection with who they are as human beings in a living world versus a world that it's created by people, by creators of manipulators. It's created by manipulators of digital and other media, and now AI. We have the usual issues that we've always had, as Native people, and in lands that have been, stolen or corrupted or environmentally disturbed. We're at a crisis, in so many ways, especially environmentally and culturally even. But the young people and the children, that's very concerning because we are stories. They are our stories. They're the continuance of our stories. And what stories are feeding them? Are they nourishing them, or are they being fed processed stories?
Joy's daughter died from cancer in December. I asked her how she was dealing with grief.
Rainy Dawn Ortiz, beautiful artist. I think of things, I still share with her, I still share things on Facebook. I thought about calling. I know one of the kids has her phone, but I text her. I still text her sometimes and write her notes. One thing I've learned is that it's really a living field that we're in. I started to see that with my first granddaughter, who is 33 now, and working for National Indian Youth Council, Krista Chico. But I started, and is that it's really a living field, and they're still here. There's still a presence. Even my daughter, she's gone on, because as we know, some people don't want, you get too attached, but it's a living field, and it's a timeless field. And that helps with the grieving. it makes me realize how the ghost dance came about, too, because, you know, they're here, and sometimes we touch in and see or feel, or we know them. They help. If you ask for it, you know, they help us. Although there were ones that didn't. Don't. That's why I always say, don't call in all your ancestors, because some of them were not helpful when they were here, and they're not going to be helpful. We come here to learn, and we learn by the way that we hard-headed humans often learn is by challenge and suffering. We grow muscle. That's how we grow our spiritual muscle. But man, some of the tests, you know what helped me one time is somebody said, and I don't remember who it was an elder, native, who said that those who can do it or have the Creator trusts or loves will be most tested. If they know you can pass it, if they know that you have it in you to go to those levels, you will be tested. And I thought, wow, Native peoples, we're tremendously loved. The Creator loves us because we have been tested at times beyond what we could carry.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.